Good morning, everyone, and it's wonderful to have you here on the last day of the World Water Week. My name is Rupali Mehra, and I look after the Asia business for a green tech company called Spouty, and I also lead marketing there. But we are here for people who really, really matter if we are going to solve for a resilient food production system. And that's the topic today. Resilient food production and water, smallholder farmers as impact generators. We are going to be showing you stories all the way from India and other parts of the world with the case examples of them on how smallholder farmers can make a difference, how they can really move the needle on the ground when it comes to future-proofing food production. But first, I want to start with this question. And I want us to take a moment to reflect on this. What will you, what will I, what will all of us eat tomorrow if 500 million smallholder farmers stopped producing food? If they just found it not lucrative enough, if they went to the cities instead of looking after their farmland for casual labor, because it's just not profitable enough to grow food on their farms anymore. There's no water, they don't have access to technology, and there is no incentive for them to continue. Then what's going to be on our dinner plates? That's something which I would like all of us to reflect on. However, this can change if we all here want it to change. We know what the situation is in reality. We know that water is running out. We know that by 2050, when the population is touching almost 10 billion, we need to produce 50% more food. And that requires 30% more water. And when there's no water tomorrow, what's going to be the situation? And it comes back to the same question. What's going to be on our dinner plates? But there are farmers out there who want to make the change, and they are making the change. They are, in my mind, pioneers in smart farming, in adopting smarter ways to produce food while not using so much water, while reducing the use of water in food production. And as we start, I'd like you to take you through that journey, to the journey of these smallholder farmers. So let's begin in the western coast of India, in Gujarat. And I'd like to share a story of a group of women, all smallholder farmers. 2 years ago, they started on a journey to change life as it was for them, their communities, and their children. They adopted smarter ways of food production. They trained themselves in smarter technology, in how they could conserve the water which is drying up in their wells and other water bodies. Here they are. And one of them is Bhavna Ben. Bhavna Ben grows castor, she grows cotton crop and fennel seeds. And she faced the typical problem that all smallholder farmers face, which is that they do not know how to scale their business, if I can call it that, because they are entrepreneurs in their own right. She did not have enough of an incentive. She did not have a kickstart, and water was running out. When she adopted smarter ways of farming, she adopted smart farming technology, she looked at ways in which she could reduce water use. She trained herself. And she was one of the pioneers in a project that we started with one of the organization that she is a part of, the Self-Employed Women's Association, which is 2.5 million women. These are the results that she saw very early on in her field. You can see there that a comparative difference. In 500 square meters of land, which is just 1/8 of an acre, Bhavna Ben was able to grow 3 times the food that she does. She was able to earn a lot more money, as you can see on your screen, than when she does, at least 3.5 times. And she was able to reduce the number of days from sowing to harvest. And we will go through how she managed to do that. Let's hear it from her, how life transformed for her and what her journey has been like.
मेरा नाम भावना बिन राठौर है और मैं सिया में 6 साल से काम कर रही हूँ। पहले हम खेत में ये उगाते थे, वो गेहूँ की खेती है, मकई की है और बाजरे की, वो सब खेती करते थे। ऐसे वो टमाटर है, वरियाली वाली है, वो सब नहीं करते थे। रात को पानी हमको खेत में डालना पड़ता था। बिजली 8 घंटे के बाद आती थी वो, लेकिन बीच में बार बार यूँ ही चली जाती थी। पूरे ढंग से हम खेत में पानी नहीं भी दे सकते और वो डारिया पद्धति से खेती करते थे, यूँ ही पानी पूरे खेत में बिछा देते थे। वो जितना चाहे समय उतना पी ही नहीं सकता था। और हमने 1 साल से हमने प्रिसिशन सिंचाई पद्धति यूज़ की है, लगाई है। तो हमने पहले प्रिसिशन सिंचाई लगाई तो हमने वरियाली वाला पाक किया। तो हमने 2 खेत में किया। हमने एक आधे एकड़ में वरियाली की और हमारा दूसरा खेत था सामने, उसमें 1 एकड़ था, उनमें भी वरियाली की। तो बहुत बड़ा फर्क मिला हमें। 1400 किलो वरियाली का उत्पादन मिला, जबकि वो 1 एकड़ वाला था, उसमें 853 किलो ही बीज हमको उत्पादन मिला। वो हमको डिफरेंस ऐसे ऐसे मिला। तो पूरे गाँव वालों को हमने बताया, तो वो लोग भी प्रिसिशन वाला सिस्टम देख के आश्चर्यचकित हो गए और वो भी देखने आते थे। तो आजू बाजू हर गांव के लोग वो सिस्टम लगाने के लिए अभी तैयार है।
I'd like to also introduce you to another lady who you see on the other side of the screen, and her name is Sangeeta Ben Rathod. She is an impact generator today. But she was a smallhold farmer 2 years ago and wasn't able to move ahead. Now, she became a smallhold farmer not by choice, but by compulsion, literally, because due to unforeseen circumstances, the responsibility of looking after her farmland fell on her. But she knew that that's not the way she's going to continue growing crop, because it wasn't profitable for her entire community, for her family, and they were in dire straits. So she too began her smart farming journey. And today, Sangeeta Ben is a resilient and profitable smart farmer. She's producing far more crop with just 20% of the water that she did. She also is not overly dependent on erratic electricity supply, because she is on the last line of the grid, and she would typically get water only at night to flood irrigate her farm, which was dangerous and a lot of wastage of water. Her story has been so inspiring that she was invited to COP28 in Dubai a few months ago. We also met her there. She shared the stage with policymakers and with global stakeholders, including Hillary Clinton. And her story was captured by several international media, including here in Sweden by business newspapers. And her exceptional journey as a pioneer has made news worldwide. She continues smart farming today and is, of course, telling her story, and the community around her is seeing what she has actually done on ground. And I'd like to take you not very far from where they live, but to the house and to the farm of Falji Bhai. He is a smart farmer in Gujarat as well in India, and he would typically, in the summer months, leave his land barren because there was no water to grow any crop. He also adopted a smarter solution, smart farming technology. And this summer, he harvested watermelon, eggplants, cucumber at his farm, a farm which would typically lie barren. In 500 square meters of land, and that's how he started out, he got an yield of 800 kilos, earning 14,000 rupees. and a net earning of 13,600 rupees, whereas he would have earned nothing, zero in that land in those months. Now, this is just, he started out in 500 square meters, but when he expands smart farming to 1 acre of land that he has, he can earn a lot of money, over 100,000 rupees in Indian currency, which is very, very good for a farmer. So these are real life case studies. And when we talk about impact, these are the farmers who are the true impact generators. And they are the ones who have it in their hands to future-proof food production. And they are the ones who need the tools, and they need a lot more to create climate-resilient food systems and to secure water for the future generation to grow enough food. So here's the smallholder farmer right now, alone out there, in one, growing their land and doing their regular business and going about work as they do. There is technology available. There is enough smart technology, clean technology, which can enable the farmer to become an impact generator. But you see, there's a gap in them accessing it. How do you fill that gap? That's when the implementing organizations at the last mile, at the ground, come in. We work, for example, at Spoudy with a host of implementing organizations. We work with Child Fund, Barnfonden, with SEVA, the Self-Employed Women's Association, with Hand in Hand in India and Africa, and VEffect and a lot more. However, they can do what they're doing at the ground, provided there is enough of financial muscle for these farmers to adopt the technology. The training and capacity building can happen with the implementing organizations, but that financial kickstart is needed for the farmer. Together, we can be impact enablers, technology providers, finance and governance, multilateral organizations, implementing organizations, the facilitators. But ultimately, it is the smallholder farmer who is the true impact generator. And for that, to make this wheel turning, we all need to come together and act fast, act at scale, and really accelerate what we are doing to future-proof food production. And the results are really phenomenal, as we have seen. We can grow a lot more food, 200%, 300%. We've seen up to 6 times the increase in crop. And this impacts and positively impacts 200 million smallholder farmers. They are the ones who will move the needle when it comes to creating resilient, sustainable food production. This also means that these farmers can reduce water use by 80%. It also means that these farmers, if they're more profitable, they will continue growing food. And then we don't have to ask that question, what will be on our dinner plates if the smallholder farmers stopped doing what they do? They stop being entrepreneurs who are in the farming business. But for that, I think we all need to change the way we look at these farmers. We need to see them as entrepreneurs. We need to see them as any individual who wants to start a business, has the muscle, but needs financial support and needs a kickstart, needs the training and capacity building. And together, we can future-proof the food production system and plan for feeding a 10 billion people planet. With that, I'd like to also invite our guests and our speakers today. We have an impressive panel of all the people who make up that wheel that we just saw. May I please call on stage Henrik Johansson, my colleague and the CEO and co-founder of Spoudy, the green tech company.
Hello, thank you.
Welcome. And also Richard Kolbach. He's the global lead of sustainable crop production at IFC, advising startups, scale-ups, and also building capacity through supply chains for the farmers. So we will be picking into a lot of your knowledge as well. Welcome, Richard. And I'd also like to call Martina Hibel, the Secretary General of Barnfonden, very, very invested in children welfare, very invested in climate and the communities so that children can have a healthier, nourished life. So welcome to all of you. I will begin with a very simple question to you all. You all saw the case studies. First thoughts really on Bhavna Ben, on Sangeeta Ben, on Falji Bai, what they are doing at the ground, and how can we, in our positions, enable them to succeed and their neighbors to succeed. Should we start with you, Henrik?
Yeah, okay, thank you. That is a question that spins in this wheel up here all day and all night long. I have been there and I met those women and others. We started this journey trying to figure out what's missing. We are engineers, we start to figure it out, the answer on that, by studying how are they doing today, what's available and what's missing. So we went to the drawing board and we did this R&D journey, but we did it a little bit different, because coming from the field and going back to engineers, you need to bring something that is not just facts on material and stuff like that. So I said, all right, we should take them to another position, and the position should be measured in more revenue for the end user. That means that you need to think a little bit different when you do the design. So we have left that journey more or less right now, and unfortunately, I think I will be some sort of engineer in the future of having this pinwheel. You have this pinwheel. My journey now is to get all the stakeholders to understand that there is a golden opportunity together. So I'm here now and trying to do my best to encourage people to engage with us on this pinwheel. Yeah, that one. Because without any financials available for the end user, how can they buy if they don't have the money until they have bought and used the technology and used the new knowledge? That is one thing. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the impact organizations out there, if they don't know what's possible, how can they take the step? So it's about building this community. I've been in Washington. I met with Richard and his team. I'm going back now to New York. There is events there. I hope that soon, rather than later, we will say that, all right, now the wheel is spinning.
Right. So let's take it to the other part of the wheel, putting it at Richard. Richard, your first thoughts when you see these impact generators doing what they do, and how can others, tens of thousands of them, their own community members, really adopt the same journey?
Yeah, I'm gonna step forward so I can use this microphone so people can hear me. I find myself in a very interesting position more and more as my experience and career progresses. I'm an engineer, mm-hmm. an irrigation engineer. I'm an agronomist. Those are the two forms of training I have. And the more I look at these problems, the more I realize I need to be a sociologist. I need to be in the minds of the farmers. Now, I've worked as a farmer. I grew up, my father was farming, I've farmed as well. So I understand at the commercial level. But where I find this fascinating is I can bring money. I can bring technology. But that doesn't change lives. And the big challenge that I see organizations such as yourself faced with is taking the results of these two very impressive women and amplifying that voice through the community, telling the story, not in terms of yield, not in terms of money, but in terms of the change that it will bring to their lives, the change it will bring to their children, the change it will bring to their grandchildren, the change it will bring to themselves. And so when I'm looking at these systems now, I'm saying, how can these be used to remove vitamin deficiencies, iron deficiencies, stunting, overweight, send kids to school, put them in better houses? The technology is there. It's been there for a while, but how do we change that story? And so I like the videos. I think they're excellent. But for me, where you started by talking about SEWA, Self-Employed Women's Association, being millions of women, that's really where the essence lies, in going to them and saying, we have this result. We have this phenomenal change that's taken place for a few people. What do you want to do? And how do you want to make this so that every single one of your members is benefiting from this. And then beyond that, how do we scale it up? Bringing them in, making them the center of this, and taking advantage of this whole cultural aspect, this culture shift that occurs. I'll finalize with one thing. I mean, I mentioned that my father was a farmer, I'm a farmer. It's a cultural thing. The way that my father taught me to farm, the way that I farm, is the same way that my children are learning to farm. And so it takes time. That culture shift is really, really slow. And particularly when you're going from rain-fed farmers who rely on a monsoon to an irrigated farmer who controls the land, who optimizes the land. It's a very different relationship with culture. It's a very different relationship with the land. It's a very different relationship with what they do. And that culture shift is tricky, difficult, and incredibly time-consuming unless you can find a way to have a large number of people out there talking about it and influencing each other, creating a network effect.
So how does one energize that network effect?
I knew you were going to ask me tough questions. I mean, energizing the network effect, there has to be some interoperability. There needs to be some benefit, some shared benefit in it. I'll give you an example. I mean, cell phones. If I have a cell phone and nobody else in my family has a cell phone, it's irrelevant. How do I make it so that there's a shared benefit in this? How do I make it so that people compare and benefit from it? What can I do by having a pump? What can a pump do in a community? And so one option is maybe to go towards a irrigation as a service model, where a pump influences many farmers. Now, that requires you to have a pump that can be moved around, that can be used at different times. And I'm sure you've gone into the thinking about going from single pump, single farmer to single pump, multiple farmers, but it needs to have that network effect. It needs to be able to scale across many different farmers. Shared pumps, pumping as a service, a large number of SMEs that operate around the pump, that get the benefit from the pump, and then it spreads, the circle spreads out, and it has to have that to cross the chasm from individual farmers who may or may not be good spokeswomen for you, to networks of farmers who just will spread the net for you.
Thanks, and let's bring in Martina as well. Martina, we're seeing impact on the ground by the impact generators, right? But of course, for them to access the technology, to make to energize that network effect that we spoke with, and to scale, the wheel needs to come together. We impact enablers need to come together. What are your thoughts when you saw these stories, and by your experience, how do we move forward?
I think the stories that we've shown and the images and the footage, they speak for themselves to a large extent. We have the impact generators, and we need to come together to enable that, and there is so much more that we can do. I was actually thinking on my way here today, because in my house at home in Malmö, Sweden, we're thinking about, should we install solar panels, and what subsidies do we have? We can get it this much cheaper, and I can make a profit, and I can do good things for the environment. But there are huge subsidies in place because our government is pushing for this and trying to make it more accessible to more people. And I think that's really what we need. We've heard these gentlemen talk about it as well. The accessibility, it's too expensive, it's too risky, the circumstances are it's too fragile. And like you also mentioned, that we have farmers that have learned through generations, but what they're seeing now is that everything is changing. You cannot rely on the same patterns, you don't have the same rain patterns, the heat is different, it's drier, it's too wet, it's not raining, it's raining too much. It's changing, and we need to change with it. So I think that we as a community, we as the impact enablers, we need to step up to the task, and we talk about it, and we talk a lot about the sort of multi-sectoral engagement, and we have to work with NGOs and corporate and funding and policy, but we talk a lot. And we have to walk the talk and start maybe also looking about the financing aspect a little bit differently. Like it's not business as usual anymore, because the world is not business as usual. Mm-hmm. So how can we change that, and how can we dare take a bit more risk and start trying and see what works and how we can scale it, and just dare doing it, I think.
I want to pick up from that. How do we, go ahead, yeah.
Can I actually pick up on something that I heard you mention, which I think is critically important, is risk. I mean, the difference between installing a solar panel on your roof, which is risk-free, essentially speaking, unless you have a hole in the roof. And investing in a pump where you could lose your capital, you could lose your income, you could lose your wealth, versus not investing in a pump where you could actually lose a crop and lose your livelihood, lose your life. The levels of risk are very different. And so one of the things you said, I think I want to pick up on, because I think it's important, the subsidies. Subsidies do play a role, as do guarantees, as do insurance policies. And that combination, that unlocking through innovative forms of financing is something that we are very much interested in. So we're looking at an insurance company in Africa called Pula, who do microinsurance, who do weather-based crop insurance. I think you're onto something there. Absolutely, I would agree with you, that there is a need not just to have the equipment, but to take some of the risk away, whether it's better training, whether it's insurance or other things. But I think that point about risk is critical.
Can I just add, sorry?
Sure, please
but
do.
I think,
And
but
then
I
I'll
think
pull in Henrik.
the sharing the risk or reducing the risk, but also there are, in several countries there are, government schemes in place, but how do they reach the most rural farmers, the most scattered, and like in India, it's really scattered in some places. How do we get that, make those those programs and government schemes available to the smallhold farmers, the remote farmers? And I think there's a lot more we can do there as well.
Henrik.
Yeah, I will also pick up on the word risk. Because everything we do, we think, what's the risk with this? And there are lots of risks if we don't, of course. But still, there are lots of risks that we might not have the answer on how to handle. One risk is if we produce technology not cost effective, it will be very costly for the one that should acquire it. That is risk. We need to focus on that. If we use the wrong distribution model, importing from one country to another country a complete solution, then it will be lots of fees, custom clearance cost, etc. If we instead move in parts and then we do some assembly in the local market, generating jobs, those one that goes into the factory, they know one that is the farmer, so that they can tell what they are doing and spreading the word, and also get the government, put pressure on them. Now we done this, now you should put on the subsidy. So it's building this, from risk elimination perspective is of extreme importance. But nevertheless, those farmers here, Sangeeta Ben, that was in the Swedish media, she has taken the biggest risk of all because she didn't have any option. Her father became sick and handing over his farm to her. And she didn't know that much, but she knew that I can't afford sending him to hospital with this revenue that we generate. So what is the risk for me? Well, I go for what they say of this smart farming, because the risk is bigger if I don't. That is not the way to scale. We need to give incentives, and we need to cut off the risk on the way to the end user. And that is the engineering journey for our company right now.
So, sort of talking about risk, and we'll stay with that just for a few more minutes. How do we share the risk so that the entire risk burden is not on the smallhold farmer? Because right now, the adoption of the technology is a risk for them. Now there are proven case studies. So they know that that part may be de-risked. But how do they uptake the technology without putting in all their savings in or all their investments or taking a loan? Are there other ways in which we can come together and de-risk the adoption of smart farming? Perhaps, Richard.
Yeah, I talked a little bit earlier about irrigation as a service. I talked about shared pumps. Those are two ways of de-risking it. I also talked about insurance is another way of de-risking it. Risk for me now is taking on so many different layers. The risk of depleting the aquifer and what that will mean to future farmers.
Yeah.
The risk of degrading the soil by not having enough organic matter and what that will mean to farmers. The risk of my children not being able to farm my land and having to go and live in a slum or in an underpaid job in a community. The risk of being iron deficient and having a malnourished child. all of these are risks, and for me, they're more social than they are technical. Increasingly, I think in that sense, and maybe it's as a father and as a parent, I think of risk very differently now. And a lot of the people that you're looking at in your communities are parents, and the risk that they're facing is not just financial. And again, I mean, it's strange to be standing here representing IFC, a financial institution. We're a development institution as well. For us, risk is not all about money. I could solve all the problems of the world if it was that simple. If it was just throwing money at it, great. I've got plenty of money. But it's the technical combined with the social that is challenging. It's overcoming that. There's also a risk, a community risk, a social risk that exists if you get left behind, and that might be a positive force. If I'm the only farmer not adopting this technology and it's taken off, if I'm the only person with a cell phone and my friends are going out without me or my community wants to reach me. So there are multiple different levels of risk, but coming back to the simplest version, shared equipment. At least at the start, shared equipment. Irrigation as a service and insurance are the three simplest answers to your question.
Any comments on that, Martina? How do you, you've had a lot of experience both in India and in sort of the African continent, different countries out there. How do you see farmers de-risk any kind of adoption, and especially when it comes to food production?
Well, one thing that's very common in Barnfondens work and across Child Fund Alliance that we're working on community level. We're working very closely with families, with farmers, with children and young people. And at the core of what we do, very, very common in our program is working with community-based groups, community-based savings and loans mechanisms where you can create that kind of cooperative or joint responsibility, enabling each other and holding each other accountable, but also sharing the risk when you're taking a loan or helping each other out. And that's on a smaller scale, that's on a community level scale, but it is still about sharing risk, but also about enabling further investments. And what we can see in these groups when we're working with agriculture and helping and supporting farmers to have a better yield, for example, when we visit them, and the first thing that they say, now I can put my children to school, now we have installed a latrine, now I have reduced the medical expenses because my children are not sick as much. We now have clean water, for example, so you can really see the direct impact on children, which is obviously why we're in it, because as a child rights organization. But I think it's also really important to mention, because these things that we're talking about are rights. These are human rights, these are child rights that we've signed on to. And yes, we see the families struggling with this, but these are governmental responsibilities. And we also need to look at the global picture and saying, yes, there's a financial risk, but there are financial risks that are bigger than that just for that family. There are risks on their rights that we have responsibility for. But even though from a financial perspective, then there are financial risks for the family, but there are financial risks for me, for you, for everybody. It's not an isolated problem. It's a global problem and a global thing to solve. And I think that we have to just assume that responsibility as a global community.
Can I just add one more thing about the financial risk? And another thing that I'm remembering that we look at in this is breaking down the duration of the risk. If I, as a farmer, am looking at buying a piece of equipment and it's going to take me 7 years to repay it, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a bad yield, one of those 7 years. And so when risk is looked at from a financial perspective, you need to be able to cover it and break it down to small chunks. If I can repay for a pump in 3 years, one bad year, it makes it 4. That's fine. I've also got to have shared benefits. So the other side of the equation is the benefits. I have to be able to pay off the pump, see a return, and pay it off in a certain period of time. So again, I come back to the insurance. If I'm looking at what the optimal price for a product is, it's probably something that I can pay off in 3 years or less, ideally. And anything beyond that, any risk beyond that needs to be taken out, and I have to have a return. So the risk, one needs to look at it in a time frame. I will not take on a 7-year risk. I absolutely won't, except for something like maybe a vehicle, which is recoverable. And so again, one can look at offsetting the risk by saying it's a lease. So you pay off the lease in 2 or 3 years, and then you have the option to buy it. You can offset it by changing the time frame. So that's very important.
So Henrik, we're talking about say, a 3-year frame is a good time to pay back. When you design technology, what's sort of the payback that one looks at, say, from your perspective and the kind of technology that you've had in terms of the mobility of the technology? Could you take us through that?
Yeah, first of all, representing the technology part and taking on a path, routing this out to some say marginal farmers without that much of cash, quite insane journey. So then you must realize and understand what Richard just said. If you go there and you have an offer that is with big risk, but also a great opportunity, and the risk in this case is 7 years ahead. I can't think that long. I have seen 7 years back, and I see that it's tougher and tougher. Will this be the magic thing for me? I don't believe so. I don't want to sign up alone on those terms. That means that we need to produce smart, and we need to reach out through the whole distribution network, extremely cost effective, to the end user, so that they should see a business case where they might see that this should be possible, if I'm a little bit lucky, of course, to be repaid within 1 year. If we can do that, then it will scale. And that is exactly what we are struggling with just now, because the end user price, in my world, should not be based on subsidies too much, because that comes and goes. We can't rely on Martina and Barnfonden and Child Fund to work for free out there. They need to have cost coverage at least. So that will also add on the cost of the technology that should be carried by the farmer and will be carried by the farmer if the money is available on fair terms from a trustworthy source, and that they believe, because they have seen evidence from their village next door, that this could be a very good business case for me. So it's about being cost effective all the way, and finding scale is about giving a low risk for the end user. So what we are going for now is to try to mobilize into this finance, governance, implementing organizations. We would like to go together with Barnfond and Child Fund, hand in hand, SEVA and others, to the farmers, having an insurance on their work. If they use new methods, sit down and absorb new knowledge on how to rotate different crops on their farmland, so there will be no pest on everything at one go, and how to protect their gold mine, which is the water reservoir, and the water is the gold. We need to do that, and that will cost money. We can't be blindfolded and think that that will happen for free. So having that, there is one business case for the farmer, there's one business case for the implementing organization, etc., etc. But of course, if we are lucky and we succeed with this, the biggest business case will be that there are more teachers in the school, because there are more children to tell how to practice the future. So it's a big thing, but it's not impossible. I would say it's quite straightforward. I think we know, because together we are quite intelligent. We have been out there, we know it. It's about finding where to start, where we see it will scale fast. That is the tricky part.
I want to add one small comment regarding subsidies, because I think subsidies are debatable in very many different ways. But I think it's also important to remember to look at these kinds of subsidies. It's not about any kind of, it's not charity. It's about rights, and it's also about government's responsibility and commitment to deliver on certain goals and to reach certain targets, about food production, about renewable energy, for example, and then who bears the responsibility for succeeding with that. And maybe their best investment is to, okay, how can we get help from our farmers, from our people, in reaching our sort of national or global goals? So to see that we're in it together, and that it's a joint work that we do, and a joint effort to reach the goals that we all have.
And I'll pick up on that because what you're offering out here is a slightly different entry point to solutioning for what we want to solution for, right? We want to reduce the overstress of water. We want to be able to recharge the water tables so that they are not in the situation that they are in food-producing countries and food-producing regions. We also want to grow more food in a more sustainable manner. We want to create resilience. We want to have the security net or the rail guards really for the farmers so that when they get on a journey, they don't fall off. But the farmer themselves, they are creating the value. How do we measure that value apart from just what they earn? And then how do we extrapolate that to the larger goals of clean energy, water reduction, etc., and arrive at the true value which each farmer is creating? A tough task, but can that be done? Should I put it to you?
We have been looking into this, carbon credit. That is not an easy task because how does it work? Who's responsible? What program? How do you sign up? But people talk about carbon credits. The big multinational companies, they are buying carbon credits to continue their journey. How can we do a simplified version of carbon credits, so the one that actually throws away the diesel pump and start to produce more food with the sun as the power source? How can they get benefited from that? So there are lots of opportunities, but it's tough to bring it together. But there are so many things. And just a comment on this subsidy. Of course, it's good if there's a subsidy. But if the subsidy is not, based on commercial terms, for example, in one country where we act, we can access a state-controlled subsidy program. That means that we should sell our technology for 50% of the cost, the actual cost, and then claim back the 50% from the government. But the government, they are elected in periods. They comes and goes. So if you have a big distribution network and you deploy a lot of technology out there and you get 50% paid now, and then someone changed the program and the 50% that you should have gained from the government is no more. So how can we continue to deliver the technology without profit? So there's so many mechanisms to take care of. But from our perspective, seeing is believing. So let's do it as big as we can do. And we will continue doing that because we think that those women, they are the winners and they will get attention soon. It takes time. We need to be patient. But if we aren't, and if we don't knock on doors, if we don't talk, nothing will happen that much, I believe. But there's a big opportunity. But show results, impact, measurable data. And those data should be collected in mass. Use digital. Your iPhone should be in their hands so they can actually read their own data and submit their own data so that that data could go into this carbon credit program.
Are you working on something like
that?
Yeah,
of course we do. Otherwise, we will not be able to be there tomorrow and the year after. Everyone should think on the pinwheel and figure out, well, we are just one player in the pinwheel. We are relying on others. Mm-hmm. So what do they need from us? What can we collect to make their lives much easier in their specific task? So it's about that. I strongly believe that bringing some more of these women and entrepreneurs into the picture and actually see that it's possible, that might be the catch-up effect that we hope for.
Measuring the true value of what these farmers are doing on the ground, apart from the value of the income that they earn, but just sort of the whole value of energy and water saving and community livelihoods, sort of the SDGs. How do we do that?
Yeah, I've been standing here with a puzzled look on my face, trying to think of how I'd answer the question. And the struggle for me is that whatever I say to you is going to be a proxy for the true value. It's not going to capture the true value, because I sit here and I think about what's the value of a healthy child. I can't tell you. I can't give you a number. I can tell you what it costs to treat that healthy child. I could possibly tell you what loss of income they have over their life. I could probably tell you what the GDP impact is. But when you talk about it, fundamentally, the way that we change the diet, the food, the availability is so influential. It's the cost of life. That's really what it is. And you want me to give you a value, I could probably sit down with my team and measure it somehow. But I don't truly believe that I would capture it. And this is why I work in this space. Because for me, it's gone, and I mentioned this to you in a previous conversation, it's gone from being simply about the pump to being about the lifestyle, about enabling a family to grow in a healthy way, enabling them to be productive through the whole of their life. It's generational. It's way beyond that. So if you want a simple answer, it's the incremental yield and the value of that. But I don't believe that. If that was what I was out to do, I would have a very shallow and empty life.
Fair point. We'll take that. And going to you, Martina, is patient capital really one of the key asks from perhaps an organization like yours, and innovative financing perhaps? Is that a way, would that be an ask for you when there's a project that you are rolling out on the ground? It needs patience, it's hard out there. As you said, it's a transformation. It not just results in one small move, but there are several complexities that one is looking at.
I think, yes, I mean, patient financing is one thing, flexible financing is one thing, realizing that things are changing so fast and so rapidly and quite unpredictable, more so than ever right now. So things will go like this, and you need to have financing that's okay with this, that you don't need to report on every specific activity and output per quarter or per year, because it will shift, and be patient. So absolutely patience. And I think it's also really important to look at different kinds of initiatives could require different kinds of funding. And for these kinds of initiatives, I'm envisioning how Barnfonden and Child Fund could use capital over a longer period of time. You could say, so give us your 10 million or 100 million, how much ever it is, and we keep it as a guarantee. It's like we're sharing the risk, and we can do it over and over and over again. And for those who, for some reason, cannot repay, we can be supportive and reduce the risk for those farmers. If rain completely failed, or there was it was too hot and it failed, we're sharing the risk. But that capital can be used over and over again and create impact over decades until it's not needed anymore, until we have the children and youth who have the sustainable livelihoods so they can afford to take the risk themselves.
Interesting, very interesting.
And that risk share facility, that risk share facility idea is one that we have actually had deployed several times. And I agree with you that that's right, as long as people are making use of it.
Yep.
I think where we as IFC have struggled with risk share facilities is we put them out in the market and then no one wants to take the risk for one reason or another. So we come back to an earlier part of the conversation, which is about how do we get to this tipping point where there's enough risk off the table, enough reward on it for people to want to do it. But $100 million is a drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
You can easily raise that if you can show that you can revolve through that $100 million. You've got to get to the point where there's demand for it. And then absolutely, I don't think you're going to have any problem getting the money if you can show that people are going to actually use it, if they're going to dip into that fund and replenish it, dip in and replenish it.
Yeah, and I think that that's interesting, and I think, and I have been thinking about, because sometimes when we're discussing as well, it's this scale and how could we get there, and what role could we play? And I'm thinking about, and I don't have the answer to it, but how can we sort of try and do both at the same time? Because our strength as Barnfonden and Child Fund, our strength is that we're with people. So we're in the communities, we're working in these communities for a really, really long time, which means that we have credibility, we have good relationships, we can work, we know the communities, we know the specific challenges that they're facing, we can discuss and we can adapt different initiatives, because we need to, there's not one size fits all, it's different. So that's how we can get they use it, but that's not a $10 billion investment because that's too big for me. But we could do that with our farmers, but how could we be more? That's what we also need to be, a lot of us, I think, to do that and work on it.
So that collaboration really, forming, creating an ecosystem, of course, but also getting in several different players in each of this part of the wheel. So it's not, how, is that what would make this wheel churn? Henrik, do you want to take a shot at that?
No. Yes. I was thinking on the solution here meanwhile, but we are now starting some projects in Africa. I can't tell anyone in Africa how things works in Africa. So we need to find the right partner to work with in Africa. And when we do that, when we scan who should be the partner to us, we do it from our own, due diligence process. Are they out there? Have they done similar things before? Do they have the ears from the end users? Do they trust them? Have they been capable to gain access to government support or external international support before? And are they project-oriented only? This is a project, the total budget on this is X. We collect X. What will happen with the project after X is ended? When the project is ended, hopefully the X was enough to run the project, but per definition, a project means you should start, but you should also end. That is a project. So we're trying to see if there is a capability within the implementing organizations. I see this as some sort of model initiative. We start the initiative by trying out if we are the best providers together to reach this specific goal, start that. But while doing that, we need also to understand that this is just a project to test. Then we need, during that period, figure out how this should be scaled. And we must be more professional to explain to the rest of the world and understand what they need to engage. And there are lots of different kind of questions that comes in return when we talk to organizations like IFC, and we have not been capable to think on all of this. Of course not, because we are not expert in everything. That is part of the game. But I still think that what Martina says, that she can take on $1 billion, that is too much. But they can take on a lot to generate a lot, and that will impact on others that can copy what has been done. I think that is the only way forward until we have a significant result out there. Then the scalability will be there. It will be built as we go. I might be wrong. I've been wrong before, but I think while seeing what is happening, that is the fastest way forward.
So several offshoots in sort of, you scatter sort of the seeds across and work with them in different ways. Everyone has sort of different challenges and different opportunities.
And then capacity.
And then sort of you grow the forest. Is that one of the...
But I think, adding to this in the conversation as well, because I think that, for Barnfonden, we're a Swedish NGO. We're a member of a Child Fund Alliance. As Child Fund Alliance, we're reaching about 30 million people in 70 countries. And we're a child rights organization, a climate-focused child rights organization. And we see that there is a lot of funding going towards this big global funds. We know that. And we're looking at it and we're saying there's a lot of this that is exactly what we're doing with these communities. But they're really difficult also for us to access. What about the local organizations that we're working with, relatively small scale with these? And I think that the huge money that we're talking about are so difficult to access for the sort of local initiatives. And I think that that's where we're struggling and trying to find ways. So how can we, because we see the goals of these bigger funds, that their goals, we can deliver on that. But it's complicated.
I've been holding on to a thought for a bit, and I want to share it with you. I mean, I think some of the elements that one has to have for success are to be simple, scalable, accessible, and appropriate. If you're not all four of those, you're going to fail. It's a chair that's going to be losing a leg. I'm also thinking kind of analogies that I can share with you. If I think about very fertile soil, and I think about bare, fertile soil, over a period of time, a crop will grow, something will grow. And there's two ways that can happen. One, I can scatter seeds on it, top down. Or two, the seeds that are in this soil will grow, bottom up. If you look at a very fertile soil, it's going to be incredibly covered in vegetation if it's bottom up. And it will be somewhat covered in vegetation if it's top down, if you put the seed on it. And if you put the same seed on it time and time again, over time you deplete that soil. Where am I coming from? I think that your solution has to be appropriate. It has to have some bottom-up aspects. The organizations, the local organizations have to embrace it. It has to be right for them. And this is where you have complexity. You're trying to deal with a farmer in Maharashtra and then a farmer in Mali, and they're two different farmers. They need slightly different things. They have common challenges, they have some commonalities, but their culture is different, the way that they approach their soil is different, the context in which they live is different, the economics is different. And so there is this huge complexity, but I do strongly believe that there has to be, for something like this, a bottom-up part to it. And so when you talk about finding partners in Africa, yes, that's good. You'll find some local partners in Africa who are good, but ultimately your partners are the farmers. And working out how to connect with them, working out how to have them embrace this and take this forward is going to be the fundamental piece. It's not going to be finding a partner who can distribute your pumps, because they will be limited. It'll be finding a way of engaging with farmers at massive scale, bottom up, more than top down.
And so I think community mobilization, if we're talking about that, is there a way that, say, Child Fund does that? Because I think that is sort of the basis of any kind of implementing on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly what you're saying. We need to work on a bottoms-up supportive environment, but it's, they have the strength. You have the people, you have the strength, you have everything there, but you need maybe some facilitation sometimes. And I think it's because it was a while ago, I reached out to our partners in both Ethiopia and Kenya, and I asked them, because we're thinking about that sometimes. We're sitting here in Sweden, in Malmö, the Öresund region, the Nordic region. It's such an innovation mecca, basically. It's a lot going on around green tech and about other things. And how can we be connecting, and how can you find the right solutions? And so, of course, we have to ask, what are the solutions that you need? And so pose that question for them to discuss with their communities. And one of the things that came back to me from women farmers in Ethiopia, I think it was that we would need a mobile drip irrigation system for small-scale farmers. And I think 2 months later, I heard about spouting. And it was just interesting, because that's where I see that what they're saying is exactly the drip irrigation, that it's mobile and can be moved for us, not for the sort of big industries, but for us farmers that we can use, because they have identified the need. And there you have the sort of ask coming from them. There you have a community that would be ready to start adapting as well.
Interesting. And Henrik, are there any stories when you started out? I know you've crisscrossed, several lands and spoken to the farmers, but some of these journeys that enabled the refinement of the product fit for the purpose and fit for the context.
Fit for the context, fit for the purpose. If you come with something new, some will think, oh, this is interesting. I would like to try it out. Some will be skeptical for different kind of reasons. But if you come there with the technology and you try to solve a specific problem, you need to think the problem through from all aspects. So before you do a mobile system, you need to visit the farmer that gave you the input. What do you need? Is there anything that you would like to change? So if you don't understand that and you just come, then I think you will go back quite fast again. So from our point of view, we we thought that we would like to achieve something that might be hard to push on people. So let's try to do a smart system. A smart system in this case should should help them to do the right thing. For example, don't have fixed installation out in the field, because when you come back the day after, someone has been there and taken it away, for example. So we do it mobile. So they will just carry it back home because of safety and because of they can. And so when you start to ask, what do you think about this technology? What is the best thing? And I had in my mind that this will be the answers, and they gave me different kind of answers. They said, just carrying it around is cool because we can lend it out to someone else. But technology that should do an impact can't just be smart and help people to do right. It should also be smart enough, I would say super smart, prevent people to do wrong. So this having one piece of land and growing the same thing year after year after year will not be that great for anyone, not for the soil. So we come with this and we say, you have to divide your land into zones. Because if you do, you will be capable to irrigate one zone at a time. And each zone should have perhaps different kind of crop, which has a time from plantation to irrigation that is a little bit different. So rotating. No one will listen to an engineer company from Sweden on that, but if you come there with the local agriculture university that has been trying out this already, then people start to adapt. So having technology is just one part of it, but think on having a technology to help people to do right, but most importantly, prevent people to do wrong. And in this case, flooding is wrong. So it should be impossible to flood with the technology. And that's just the technology part. We don't distribute enough of water to flood. They can't do that. So learning by doing by themselves is quite successful, approach.
We'll also be taking questions so that our online audience, as well as you all out here, know that we will be taking questions in a few minutes. But I want to sort of play one soundbite of Sangeeta Ben at COP. If we can quickly touch upon that, we'll just quickly listen to her, and then I have a follow-up question to that.
અમારી સેવામાં 25 લાખ બહેનોનું સંગઠન છે અને હું ખેતી અને પશુપાલનનું કામ કરું છું. જે પહેલાં અમે ખેતી કરતા હતા તો ઢાળિયા પદ્ધતિથી ખેતી કરતા હતા. જ્યારે જેમાં રોગ વધારે આવે, પછી નિંદામણ વધારે થાય અને ઉત્પાદન પણ સારું ના મળે. અને અત્યારે જે સ્પાવડી પંપ વાપરીએ છીએ ને તો અમારે એટલી મહેનત નહીં થતી અને સીધું પાણી ટપક જેટલું જમીનના છોડને જોઈતું હોય ને એટલું જ મળી રહે અને જેનાથી નિંદામણ પણ ના થાય અને રોગો પણ ના આવે. જે અમે જ્યારે ધાળિયા પદ્ધતિ ખેતી કરીએ તો ખાતરને બધું અમારા હાથેથી નાખવું પડતું હતું. દવા પણ પંપથી છાંટવી પડતી હતી. પણ અત્યારે જે અમે બાયોગેસ થકી સ્લરી જે ડાયરેક્ટ ટેન્કમાં નાખી દેવાની અને ડાયરેક્ટ નરી પર ચડાવીને એવી રીતે ખાતરના દવા આપીએ છીએ.
Well, so this was Sangeeta Ben, whose story we saw earlier. She's moved on in her journey. She did her training, and now she's building her capacity. She's trying different ways in which the technology that was made available to her can then perhaps be used. Can she put in some of the fertilizers or that she was traditionally using through that? Can she use it in another way? Can she lend it to her neighbor, for example, right? And she now knows that it's the plant which needs the water, so she does not need to flood irrigate her entire land and also feed the weeds, for example. She's saving several hours because she's not de-weeding her land. These are all part of the journey and part of capacity building, right? However, for this to happen, we have them the smallholder farmers need to be trained, or also train us on what they need in terms of technology. So it's a two-way street. But also, they need some time, right? But how, again, I'll come back to that whole patient capital. Why why are we in such a hurry for the results? And how can we make patient capital really a success on the ground? Because we're hearing, I mean, this is from COP, and we do know that there were some fantastic announcements in creating climate-resilient food systems. How does it really reach Bhavna Ben and Sangeeta Ben, and how can she and her community, I come back to that question, how can they really build capacity and then sort of prove that impact back or share that impact back to the decision makers sitting perhaps at COP28 and COP29? Hard question, circular, but yeah.
No, but I think that that's also, as NGOs and civil society organizations, we have all these different roles to play. And one of the really important roles is to be a voice amplifier, to help and support these fantastic women and farmers and impact makers to amplify their voice. And the best way we can, we shouldn't have to, but we can. So how can we... That's one part of what we do, but it needs to be done more. And like, seeing is believing and doing, but I can still get frustrated because I see, well, we see it and we know it works, but we don't get there.
What I think we can do, especially we can do together, that works on the ground and meet these people. First of all, we need to gather the stories. Then we must be extremely aggressive, telling the story. And by telling the story, if there is any need that is not there yet to be able to scale, we also be much more, precise in what's missing and challenge others that we think sits on what's missing, telling this is what is needed here and now, and invite people so that they actually will understand exactly what is needed, not just in overall nice words. Must be much more, precise, I believe. Much easier to get attention if you say, I would like exactly this from you. Are you the right person for this? No, but my friend is. I think the communication must be more spot on and more frequent, coming out in more channels. And then, of course, bringing people together that we believe are the ones that can make it happen. Because I can't do more than we do, and you can do more than you do, and you are looking at things and figure out how to support. If we don't understand exactly what is needed case by case, it will be a longer journey.
Any thoughts on that, Richard?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that other than the voice amplification, because I even though I'm convinced, even though I agree with the technical aspects and the financial aspects of the pump, even though we can provide capital, it's the farmers deciding to buy the pump that's going to make the real difference. And so that voice amplification, finding a way to take the examples that we've seen of these farmers in India who are inspirational and make more people aware of what a change it can make in their life at a farmer level is really where the challenge lies for me. It's not at COP. It's not in Stockholm. It's not in Washington, D.C., in the meetings that we have to provide the finance. That's not what's going to make the difference. It's in the voice amplification. So I agree with you. We need to be passionate, but we need to work out how our passion can combine with the farmer's success and scale it up at their level, and that's very, very complicated. I mean, we've been talking about it for the last 45 minutes to an hour, and we don't necessarily have the answers. And I think in conversation with you before, I said, increasingly my mind is moving away from the financial details and the patient capital, if you will, into the story and the social side and how to get that voice amplified and how to keep it simple, translate it into the different contexts of the people and make sure that the awareness is there. Maybe it is education. Maybe it is educating children at a younger level who are in farming communities about the benefits of irrigation, about conservation, sustainability. Maybe it's an education approach, but it's very much about getting the stories into the cultures of the people so that they will adopt it.
Can I have one? Sorry, one It's too interesting not to. No, but it's also relating back to your first initial question. Like, your first initial question today was about what would you eat if 500 million farmers stopped producing? And linking it, because what we're seeing in several of the countries and communities where we're working, in Nyeri, in Kenya, for example, youth are not very interested. Right? And you have a huge, in Africa, in many countries in Africa, you have a huge young population. You have huge problems with youth unemployment. And you have a lot of youth not really interested in farming anymore because they can also see how their parents are struggling. They can see that challenges are increasing. They can see it's not really worth it. You have the risk of people moving into the cities and stop farming because, like you say, it's no profit in it. I can't sustain on it. So how can we engage youth, work with young people, often a bit more tech-savvy than us, and involve youth in this kind of transition, and at that point also making a bit more appealing maybe, or interesting, and where they can see, this is different from what my parents are doing. This could actually get us somewhere, and how can we build on that, and really not just work for children and youth, but with, because they have such high capacity and can really take us the extra mile, I think.
That's sort of a very good point, and I'm seeing a sliver of solutioning here. We have been talking about sort of what the challenges are, and what really needs to be done. But sort of on the ground, these are some of the solutions heard from you in terms of the mobilization of the community, get the demand generation and interest through case studies. If there are any questions out there, please raise your hand and we will pass the mic on. There are at that side. Can we have the mic behind there, please? And then we can sort of close with these two questions.
Good morning. Timo Gaspek, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands. Thanks for interesting presentations and inspiring stories. I think when looking at trying to scale things, we might need to be even more critical about what we're trying to introduce. Because it's not just the profitability. If it needs to be repaid within a year or 3 years, that sets hard limits on what it can cost. Also, we can't just look at the profitability of the technology. The farmer who was irrigating his farm in the summer spent his time on his field and could not go somewhere else to work for someone else. So he lost income as well. These are communicating vessels. And I think we need to be much clearer about the total household economics and the difference on the total household economics, and not just the value of the field, even the net value of the production on the field, and then see if it makes a meaningful difference for a household. I've been looking at a lot of this kind of analysis, and often you find that on an annual basis it's only $20–30 extra, and I can imagine that some people will say, yes, this is great, I need it, but I can imagine that for a lot it's like, but yeah, is it worth investing in something and only getting, when I take the other changes into account, then is it worth the risk of actually a very small increase because of the communicating vessels?
Any of you want to take that up? Yeah, Martina.
No, but I think it's a really good and important question and issue to raise, and I think that's when working with this, it's really important not just to look at the one indicator, and one thing is like how much did I produce, but look at the whole family income, but also to look at, you choose a number of income or indicators that you think they have considered valuable, such as how many years are children attending school, look at health status of children, look at how housing and how people are living, are they able to invest and increase? So it is really important, absolutely, to look at more indicators when seeing, is this a successful approach or not? And then it's not, we need a number of innovations and technologies for different settings, and not forgetting about all the traditional knowledge and indigenous knowledge and how we can do things differently and combine it.
Yep.
Timothy, I agree with you. Farmers are smart. They're going to make a good decision at the end of the day. I mean, these technologies are not going to succeed unless the holistic picture is better. And this is why I keep saying, step away from just the dollars in the crop and think about the impact on the lifestyle. the livelihood, and the future of the family, because that's the way the farmer thinks. They don't think about it in terms of purely in terms of risk. That certainly it's a factor, but it's the impact on what else can I do? What else can my family do? What else can my husband do? These are the things that cross their minds. Farmers are smart. They are businesswomen, and we've seen a couple of smart businesswomen here.
I can't agree more. They are extremely smart. If you free up 4 or 2 hours, whatever hours, every day because you're not removing weeds, you will not be lazy and just relax. The first thing that comes up, what can I do now? Is there any way that I can earn a little bit more money when I've freed up this time? They are extremely smart. And we work with this organization, SEVA, Self-Employed, you said it already. Earlier this year, they launched something that they called SEVA Climate School. SEVA Climate School is about one thing. They go state-wise, block-wise, village by village. They bring people together, all of them are women, and they talk. Roundtable discussions. What did you do today? What will you do tomorrow? Do you have any good examples? Yeah, you should buy this trolley, because with this trolley you can have much more loaded and it goes for itself, you know. They share things. So those communities, if we can pin in and get them to actually trust in what we do, then we have the scalability. They are super smart. I have seen what they have done with our technology. Okay, I didn't think on that. I think we must understand that and encourage those communities to do exactly what they do with SEVA Climate School. And they launched it in COP. And the reason for launching it in COP together with Hillary Clinton is because this initiative needs some fundings. They need to rent a small bus to take women from one village to another village. Who should pay for that? So they don't need that much money, but they need some sort of financial support to continue this journey. If they do that, and we can feed in and tap in with alternatives, they will make the decision. And they will make the decision if this is good for me and my family, not just now, but also for the future. That's how it works.
And that's true, because what we have seen on the ground is that if they don't think it is economically, socially, it's not going to result in change for the better, it's not going to be adopted. And we've seen that on the ground. But if they see the change, and if they see how much more they earn, so either way, by hours saved or with more crop, so there are different ways of calculating. So it's not just a one sort of produce-wise, but many more, and different indicators as well. In fact, they actually adopt it, and they tell others as well. And I've spent some time on the ground, and some of the questions that the women also ask is, I've saved up a little money. I want to send my child to this training institute. Do you think it's a good one? So just chitter-chat. It had nothing to do with farming, for example.
Can I just fill in? This Sangeeta Ben that was in the Swedish media, when she was capable to distribute water extremely efficient, she also looked at her tank where she has some fertilizers. She was thinking, how shall I get that into these drip lines? So they came together. We need a tank that we take this, we absorb it in the water, and we use the water straight into the drip lines. Increased a lot in output. So they take the steps. So inspired by that, we went back to our R&D center in Malaga, where we do what we hope is the future farming for small scales. So we have learned from there, and now we have tried to figure out on how we can come with some customized add-on to our technology that doesn't cost that much, so that she can take that, improve even better, and next round table, say, I did this is what you need. I think that is a smart way of doing it.
And let's take another question.
Yeah, my name is Justus Waimiri from Kenya, Water for the World. I'm very, very pleased to be in this discussion. Very insightful. Now, we've dwelt a lot about crop farming. I'm yet to hear something about livestock farming, and we know the tremendous potential that exists in that space, to increase production and food security. And what are the technologies? Happy to hear from the engineers. Have you tried to adopt in that space, and have you had any results there that we could take home?
Well, on the same topic, perhaps, one implementing organization contacted us. They are trying to solve a very, very challenging situation. Farmers are quitting, there is not enough of water, all of that. So they had a project where they were digging wells, open wells, groundwater ponds, I would say. Sorry, rain-fed ponds. We're digging those, and they were trying to get fish to grow and be happy in that water. They realized quite soon that the water is standing still, so the fish will not be that happy. We should at least circulate the water. So they bought solar-powered pump systems from the market, and they tried it out. But it's a challenge, because if you have a digged hole in the ground, it's quite muddy. So the technology didn't survive because it was clogged by mud and other things. So it didn't work that well. So they contacted us and asked, can we also try your technology? For sure. So we handed over some systems, and they started to circulate. And then we did the visit. So I was looking at, okay, quite small pond, and the land is of no use, and the fish is jumping in the water. I said, all right, it seems that it works. Yeah, it's a robust system. It doesn't break down. It doesn't get clogged, etc. So why are you just circulating the water? You should sprinkle the water above the surface, because then you bring oxygen into the water, and the fish will be extremely more happy, and the harvest will grow. That was a good idea. So we tried it out, and it worked well. Then it was time for harvest, and here comes the thing. They just empty the pond with the water by having a diesel engine. Instead of using our technology, it will take so much time to empty this because the flow rate is not that high. So they use the diesel pump, and they do collecting the fish with their hands. Stop. You should use this water to irrigate that piece of land. They say, no, this water will not be enough to generate and harvest. Well, let's try it. Just reroute the pump, connect it to the drip lines, use the water. That is a very healthy water for crop. They did. And that is a combined farming initiative. And this was fed out, the trial and error project, by them having an idea, and we add on some other ideas, and then we come together, and now we are there. It works extremely good, and that is part of the plan that we have now when we go to different countries in Africa to see combined farming might be smart also to do here. If the water is extremely short, we should use every drop available to generate food, fish, cattle, I don't know, different kind of. So there are lots of engineers out there that has, big thinking and smart thinking.
And a lot of
I don't think
innovation on the
I answered
ground.
your question, sorry about it, but I was inspired by your question.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the ideas that we've got from the ground, just talking to the farmers, like for this one, for example, it is fantastic. And I think we would, if there are no more questions, perhaps we can wind up. I'm going to leave it with one question, if anyone can answer it very quickly. The second one, what's the cost of acting too slow, or perhaps not doing nothing at all? We know that, but any...
I don't know. I know it will be a tremendous cost in those communities, but what is the cost? I don't know.
What's the cost to not just communities, it's also to us?
Yeah, I mean, the cost you would see, and I would have no idea of numbers, but I mean, obviously, you would have increased cost of flour or
Food.
coffee, or I mean, any kind of food across the world. You would have increased cost of living globally. You would have children dropping out of school. You would have children in dangerous and hazardous labor. You would have children in unhealthy conditions. You would have, children being deprived of their rights in so many communities and countries. And we have an obligation to make sure that that doesn't happen. So it's so many, and that I don't want to put a price tag to. It's
just quite hard.
Yeah.
I mean, thankfully, I think, we're not at risk of acting too slow or doing nothing at all. We're in there, and I think that when the demand is there, that the action will be taken. But if you want examples of where the action has been slow in the past, in case by cases, or nothing's been done, look at where we have conflict. Look at where we have violence in the world. It's around water and it's around food fundamentally. And I've seen this in countries where we've had robust agricultural systems in one part of the country, and nothing in others. It's as simple as this. I can pick up a gun and make some money, or I can starve. As a father, I'm going to pick up a gun. It's as simple as that. For me, as a mother, I'm going to pick up a gun. As a child, I'm going to pick up a gun. And so I think, if you take it at the extreme example, it's a very violent society in a very violent world, filled with conflict. If nothing were to happen, but thankfully, I think we have organisations such as Spouty that are working on solutions, and at the time at which farmers see this as the solution and they are ready to adopt it, they will. And so I'm not as pessimistic as that doomsday scenario, but we have seen it in the past. It's quite severe.
Well, that's true, and with that, we know there is a massive cost. We don't have the numbers. We know what's really taking place. We also know that it comes directly to our doorstep, to our dining tables, to our plates, right? So it impacts all of us. So with that, I would like to close this session and thank you all, Martina, Hendrik, Richard, for sharing your valuable insights. And of course, to our farmers as well for the stories that they bring to us and the examples that inspire us. And with that, I would like to end with inviting all of you to join us. There's a scan button out there. You can email us at partnerships@spouty.com. Any questions, any ideas, please get in touch with us. Join the movement to future-proof global food production. Thank you.